Hi there, this is Allie Powell from the Women in Sales podcast, and today I have an amazing guest with me here, Tonni Bennett, and I just wanted to introduce her. She's the VP of Sales at Terminus right now, and she has a really cool background and kind of thought process on being a woman in sales and just sales in general. So I want to introduce you guys to her, and we'll talk about her career path and kind of go from there. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, awesome. Okay, so do you want to go through just to kind of start out your career path and how you got into sales, and just take us through that whole journey?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a very blue-collar family and didn't know anything about sales or tech. My perception of sales was kind of used car salesperson. So I had no desire to do sales initially. In college, I was pre-law. I was determined to be a lawyer and to do something, to change the world, as a lot of kids feel they want to do in college. And when it got time to graduate, I had a lot of school debt and just realized I can't go to law school. I have to get a job. And so I kind of fell into sales. A mentor of mine encouraged me to take a sales position at UPS. So I worked for a kind of a call center environment, inside sales for UPS. And it was great. I learned a lot of good skills, but I hated sales at first. I was terrible at it. It was very frightening. I was a little timid. And I worked in an office with a bunch of people who were much older than me and mostly men. And so it was kind of intimidating. But over time, I started getting good at it and thought, you know what, this is actually kind of cool. And then really when I landed a position at Pardot, got into a smaller startup kind of environment in tech, that's when things really took off for me. I realized, wow, sales can be incredibly fun and exciting, and you don't have to sell like an older person and be boring, but you can really bring your personality into it. And so worked at a couple tech companies in sales positions. Pardot, we were acquired by ExactTarget and then Salesforce. Worked for a company called PeopleMatter out of Charleston. Worked for SalesLoft, and then came to Terminus and have built the sales team kind of from the ground up here. So
cool. Okay, so something you said at the beginning, so UPS. So funny, this is a kind of a funny story. I actually worked at UPS for like a brief stint. It was like 6 months or 5 months, I can't remember, because I was really just like their worst employee ever. And they did not understand my philosophy on life and on work and on sales in general. Like I would be like, why do I have to go to work at 8 a.m? Why can't I go at 10 and work till 9 at night if I want to? So anyways, I wasn't a good fit for that place. So it's kind of interesting that you said you didn't love sales at first because of working there. Nothing against UPS, but I just am thinking back to my time there, and I honestly was like, am I supposed to be in sales? Because I don't think I like this type of sales. So I think it's important to think about, for the women listening to this, there's all kinds of sales jobs. And I think tech, the fact that you found your way to Pardot, it's very interesting because I think there's two ways of looking at sales. And I think people can be taken, like maybe not want to continue if they're in the wrong kind of sales role or the wrong kind of company for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. And I would say for me, probably part of the reason I just hated sales at first was because I just didn't know what to do and I had no context for it. But what I will say that I'm super thankful for is I got great training at UPS. The leadership team was incredibly nice. They gave me a shot when I was fresh out of school. And I got great foundational training that I didn't get at a startup. So when I went to Pardot, our sales leader, Derek, was incredible and he invested a lot in me, but we didn't have formal training. So I'm very thankful for that experience. Sure. We've been able to do well at Pardot without it. But to your point, for everyone, especially women getting into sales, one message I would say is don't get discouraged if you don't like your first sales position. Most people don't like their first sales position that much because typically you start in a more junior role. You're not making as much money yet. You have to kind of do your time for a year or two first to really get into a sales role where you're making more money, and typically that's more fun and exciting. So I do think there's importance with sticking with the first thing that you do. Give it a year before you decide whether or not you like it.
I think that's a great tip for people, I don't know, younger or older, even someone just getting into sales at some different point in their life. Like sticking with that for 1 year is really important because you just won't know, there's no way to know if you're going to really be good at something if you just do it for like a few months.
Yeah. And I think there's a misconception that some people are born good at sales, and people who are born with a more like outward personality are better at it. But the truth is, no one is born good at sales. It is, certain people may have a personality that lends more to it than others, but it's definitely a learned skill. You absolutely get better over time. And so everybody is terrible at first at sales. So you really need to do it for a while and enhance your skills. And that can be painful, but ultimately I think it's really rewarding. And usually the people who are best at sales are ones who started in a role that was such a grind, because that really gave them the, endurance they needed to continue on in sales.
So from your perspective, obviously over the years, you've probably hired and fired people. Like, what do you think makes like a really good salesperson these days? Like, I feel like it's changed over the years, but like, what do you look for when you're hiring someone?
There are 4 key things that I look for, and some of these are specific to this role at Terminus right now. So for me specifically, I look for, every sales leader will say hustle. So that's universal. So someone who's going to come in and work hard, but not just, for me, it's not just work hard, but work smart. We're still a young enough company where, we just took Series B. So we've grown quite a bit. Well, we're still a young company. We still need people who are very entrepreneurial. I don't have bandwidth, unfortunately, to really spend as much time with each rep as I would like. So we need people who can figure things out on their own and not just work hard, but work smart. Next is intelligence, which more so is, can you pick up a complex concept and put it into action really quickly? Back to bandwidth. I don't have time to train and retrain. I need people who can come in, pick this stuff up quickly, and just go and execute it. So that's important. Yeah. Then I look for communication. Obviously, communication is very important in sales. For us, selling to marketers, someone who does not sound like a salesperson, who's really friendly, who's not super formal, that's important. So someone who makes a good employee at UPS is different than someone who makes a good employee at Terminus, right?
Agreed. It's so interesting that like someone could be a bad fit at one company and a really good fit for something else that you could be selling. I completely agree with that, and I feel like it's something people should talk about more.
Yeah, and when you're in a startup environment and tech sales, usually in general, it's a lot more fast-paced. So a lot of these kind of hustle and hard work and moving fast and learning fast are all part of what you'll get in a startup. At a larger, more corporate company, you have more time to come in. Like IBM, my father-in-law spent 30 years in sales at IBM. They have like a 3-month training program. We have a 2-week training program. But thing along those lines is coachability and adaptability. So again, things are moving super fast in our industry, in our space. Even the reps that we hire with 10 plus years of sales experience, they still don't know how to sell to this audience at this time in the market.
Sure.
So we need people who are humble enough to be coachable, to learn, and to help their peers learn. So those are my key things.
Oh, I love that. So I know this is kind of going backwards, but I wanted to understand what you look for in people so that people understand what types of companies they could apply for. But talk to me about like your career path. So you started as an AE, obviously, and now you've worked your way up to what, most people would think is like a really amazing, job for, I don't know how old you are or whatever, but you seem young. A VP of sales, you were a director of sales before that. Like, can you go over a little bit about how you think you got there? And like, is this what you always wanted, I guess? Did you always know that you wanted to do this as you kind of moved your way up in different companies?
Great question. No, this is not what I thought I wanted to do. And now I'm so happy that I ended up here. I'm a big believer, and it's ironic that I say this because, I'm 29, I'm a vice president of sales for a fast growing tech company. So I have moved up in my career very quickly, but it's still a pet peeve of mine when us millennials come into a company and expect a promotion right away. So my advice on the matter is, if you're just doing what you do really well and investing in your craft, good things will happen. So I didn't set out to be a sales leader. In fact, I used to specifically say, I never want to be a sales leader. I just want to be an AE and make a lot of money for as long as possible. That's my only focus. So every job I've had, I've just been like, how can I want to beat everyone else. And especially as a woman in sales, my sales team at Pardot was mostly male. There were a few other women. And I just said, I want to beat all the men. I want to be the best rep. I want to prove that, I've got what it takes. I was also one of the youngest on the team. So anyway, all that to say, this was not the career path that I wanted. However, I very much admired our sales leader at Pardot. I have the utmost respect for him, Derek Grant. He's now at SalesLoft. And I told myself, one day, if I do sales leadership, I'd kind of like to do what he did, build a team from the ground up and lead a team that way. So what happened was...
Why did you know you wanted to do that? Just because of what you saw with him?
Yeah,
like, how did you know that that's the type of thing you wanted?
Yeah, so it's hard to explain, but something about how he led the team, he was able to really inspire us to want to work for each other, work hard for him, work hard for ourselves, generating a very collaborative and competitive environment. And I just thought, man, how incredible would that be to be able to help people advance in their career and to be a part of growing something with such a cool culture. So I couldn't really articulate what I liked about it, but I knew there was something there that I thought was really cool. But
no,
yeah,
that's awesome.
It wasn't exciting to me.
Okay.
What happened was, I was just a sales rep focused on being in sales. And then my husband actually knew the co-founders of Terminus pretty well. They were like a 5-person company at the time. And he was talking to them and said, hey, Tony's interested in leading your sales team. Would you be interested in having her join? And Eric, our CEO, said, well, she's at SalesLoft. I'm good friends with Kyle Porter, their CEO. I don't know if we could do that, but I would be interested. Then he came home and said to me, Eric and Sangram are really interested in having you come lead their sales team. Would you be interested? And I thought, well, I'm really happy at SalesLoft. I don't know. So he kind of brokered this, conversation. And so Eric and I met for lunch, started talking, and I felt kind of bad leaving SalesLoft because I hadn't been there very long and was excited about some of the stuff going on. But ultimately, I just knew, like, this is my chance to do kind of what Derek was able to do at Pardot, help to build something. I was excited to be able to sell to marketers again, and I felt like I really knew from coming out of Pardot and SalesLoft how to sell to this audience. I felt like I knew a formula for success. And so I kind of fell into it in a sense, but it was something in the back of my mind that I'd wanted to do. And what I will say about moving so fast in your career, there's good and bad to it. Part of it's good because it's exciting to be able to be challenged and to move ahead so quickly. The downside that I think people don't really talk about is when you do jump a couple levels in an unnatural way like I did, it's also really, I don't know if I can use profanity, but really freaking hard.
Okay. Well, I don't know if freaking is a swear.
You're jumping ahead in a way in which you don't always have all the foundational things that someone who moves a little bit slower would have. So honestly, my advice for the average person is you kind of do want to be a sales manager and then a director of sales and move your way up in a company because you gain a lot of those really important skills. For me, it just means that I have to work all the time to make sure that I can quickly get to the level that I need to be at. And so don't get me wrong, it's awesome. Again, I love what I do, but just kind of a word out there. When you jump steps, it means that you're working 80-hour weeks, that you're working all the time, that you've really got to prove yourself. And you've got to have a lot of self-confidence because you get into situations where you've never done this thing before and you're like, holy crap, I'm making a decision for a company. If I make the wrong decision, it could be detrimental to our business, and I haven't made this decision before. And so you really have to be confident. You have to have a great network of mentors, of other sales leaders that you can ask advice from.
Great stuff in there. I mean, okay, so when you were when you got that introduction through your husband to go, were you guys living in Atlanta, like a SalesLoft in Atlanta? I don't remember. Okay. So, all right. So you're in Atlanta, you decide to take this job. How big was Terminus at that point, and how many, were there actual sales reps yet, or were you like, what was it like?
I was a 9th employee. They had just hired a salesperson 2 weeks before me. So I inherited one salesperson. And so we were pretty small. Yeah. We had like 4 customers that the CEO had sold and our CMO Sangram. So we had like 4 or 5 customers that were paying us almost nothing.
Cool. Okay. And so how many people have you hired since then? And like how big is your team now? What have you learned?
Close to 40. So I have 16 account executives and a sales manager. We have revenue ops, and then we have 17 SDRs, an SDR manager, and director of sales development. So I think that's close to 40 now. So the team has grown quite a bit over the past 2 years, and I feel very blessed to be in a company that has grown so fast. It's partially time in the market, and it's partially having an awesome sales team.
So cool. That's wonderful. That's really neat. So talk about that experience then, like going from one sales employee underneath you, leading that and growing to 40-ish people in the sales org. What have you learned? How long has that taken?
Well, a ton of things.
I know that's like a big question, but
ton of things. A lot of what I've learned, I guess, big picture is the most important thing is taking care of your people, listening to them, including them in decisions that you make, making sure they understand how important they are to the organization, giving them a career path, just being people oriented. Any mistakes that I've made have usually been where I tried to make a decision without getting enough collaboration. So I try to strike the right balance of ultimately I have to make a decision. It's not going to make everyone happy. That's one of the worst parts of being a sales leader is you have to make decisions that people don't like. But I always try to get input from the team and make sure that I'm doing things that are in their best interest, and also finding the right balance of what's in the best interest of the company and what's in the best interest of the individual, and trying to lean more on the side of the individual, but it all has to be in context of what's best for the company.
Okay. And one thing I've been thinking about as you've been talking is, someone like myself, there's a lot of AEs out there that are really good at what they do, crushing it. And, they might be thinking, hey, I want to become a director of sales or do what you've done with Terminus, like go build out a sales team. What pieces of advice would you give them in looking for the right company to leave your company for? Because, when you're established in your company as a great sales rep, it's kind of, you think to yourself, hey, I kind of want to go do something new, but at the same time, I have it made in the shade in a way.
Yeah.
When do you, what advice would you give someone like that?
So I think there's two paths to being, in a sales leadership role. And one is what I did, which is the reason why I am where I am at this age is because I took a huge risk. When I went to Terminus, I had a job where I was well paid. I took a huge pay cut and a huge risk on a company that had 5 customers, no proven necessarily product market fit, nothing. So for instance, I have 2 friends who have done the same thing. And unfortunately, neither of those companies have gone anywhere. So those 2 friends have spent 2 years making half or less of what they could have made if they continued to be a top performing sales rep. So, to make sure that's very clear, there is some luck involved that I got in at the right company at the right time. So one way of doing it, the way that you progress fastest is when you take a risk on a company, but that risk means it either ends up really well for you or it doesn't. Now, even if it doesn't, that's fine. You can still go back to another company and say, look, I worked for the startup for 2 years. I was able to accomplish X, Y, and Z. The company didn't work out, but I have now this incredible experience. So it's still a good thing, but there is no guarantee that it will grow like Terminus has. On the flip side, the other and really safer option is to try to move up in your own company. And if you're at for instance, I have a lot of friends at Marketo here in Atlanta. If you're a sales rep at Marketo, that is making sure you have visibility to your direct manager, but also all the leadership across the org who would make these types of decisions. And it's showing them, first, you can overachieve in your current role. You need to be kicking ass at your role before you ask for anything else. And then 2, you need to go ahead and act like you have the next role before you do. Doesn't mean boss people around, but be a leader in your current role. Help out the new people in the organization. Bring new initiatives or talk tracks or things to management's attention. When you start acting like a leader before you are a leader, when time comes, oh, we need another manager, they're going to think of you, and you're more likely to get that promotion. Now, there's always, as much as I hate this, a little bit of politics to a company too. You want to do your best to not be wrapped up in politics, but still, you need to identify and understand who you need to know to get a promotion. And I think a lot of women aren't as good at that as men often are. again, not doing it in a political way, but at the same time, if you know that the head of the division is a certain person, you need to have a good relationship with that person and let them know why you're interested in management and what your motives are. And you need to let your manager know, and anyone else in between.
Let's talk about that then, because I think that's a really important topic in general, regardless of sales or anything. Like, being a person, but since we are women and this is for women, I would like to talk about it in terms of being a woman. Like, managing internal relationships and not getting into the politics in a weird or bad way, but in a way that puts you in a position to maybe be thought of for that position. I don't know. It's so complicated to talk about those things, but I would love to hear like what you've seen work or what you've liked from people that have come to you maybe and tried to like put their hand out there saying, I'd like to, get to know you because maybe I want to become a manager, whatever it is. Like, talk a little bit about the political aspects of being a woman and working in sales and working your way up and around the org.
That is a really, really good question. A couple thoughts. So one is, I think as women, and I really hate to classify as women, we are this way. And
I know.
But as women, we tend to be more emotional. We tend to be more personable and wanting to have relationships throughout the organization. So I think on average, women are by nature a little bit better at building some of these genuine relationships. We often like to be collaborative. My husband does not, for instance, as an example, he does not like to be collaborative. He wants to do his own thing. He wants to be the best, and he always has to be right. I'm much the opposite.
What does your husband do? Is he in sales, or what does he do?
He's in sales. Now he just started his own.
Okay.
He was leaving a sales position. But I think women tend to be more collaborative. We usually, on average, genuinely want to be collaborative with others. We want other people to buy into our ideas. And I think that lends really well to networking in an organization. I think by nature, we can also tend to sometimes be catty for whatever reason. So I think as women, we need to be careful to use these things to our strength and not to let them hurt us. Because if you're known as someone who's talking about other people or stabbing people in the back, unless you're in a really messed up organization, which unfortunately there are some of those, you're probably not going to get promoted. That reputation is going to hurt you. But at the same time, if you use those things to your advantage and you stay on everyone's good side, you fight for points when they're important to you, but other things you let go. You pick and choose your battles is what I'm saying there. So for me, for instance, the leader of every single team, whether or not I always agree with decisions that they make, I'm always going to come to them with respect for their position. I'm always going to make a case for something if I want it. I know if I help the head of customer success achieve something later, she or he is going to help me do that later. So I really think it's kind of common sense of treat people like you want to be treated, fight for things that you want, but make sure you're treating everyone with respect and you're not being too political. But if you're not making friends with people who could help you progress, that's a huge miss. And I think often men are really good at, we talk about the good old boys club, especially here in the South, it's very real. Men go drinking together, and then often they think of their buddy when it comes time for promotion. They're not trying to be sexist, but they have a closer relationship to that person because they've been out drinking and hanging out. And
I agree. Yep.
If you feel comfortable drinking with the guys, do it. If you don't, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But the key is make sure you have
find a different way. Yeah. Wow. So one thing you said, so I lived in Boston for 10 years and I've worked at HubSpot for 7 years, right? I just moved to Charleston, South Carolina. So it's so funny that you said like the good old boys club in the South. Like, let me tell you something, that exists up north too. So that is a real thing that I think women need to be aware of in their organizations. Like, boys, guys, whatever, like they do tend to like kind of go out with each other and like bro and and they somehow form these relationships where then you're correct. Like, I've seen it happen before, somehow someone gets a position just because they're like friends with someone, or at least it feels that way. And feeling that way, whether or not it's true or not, it still feels that way.
Mm-hmm. One other thought on that, I think that, I mean, it's tricky, and sometimes you don't know exactly why someone was promoted, but I
Right.
think, I hate to say this, and some people may hate me for this, and if you do, shoot me a note. I love to have this dialogue, but I've kind of come to the opinion of sometimes as women, and any kind of minority, I think, like anyone who's different, we have to
Sure.
be a bigger person. So my theory used to be, I'm just going to act like one of the guys, and it is what it is. And, whether they respect me or not, I don't care. I'm going to sell a lot, and that's all that matters. And over time, I've actually come to the opinion that if you're the bigger person, then it actually works in your favor. So an example, a lot of times on sales teams, especially all guys sales teams, conversations can get pretty inappropriate. I think there's a balance between hanging in there with the guys and making sure they know that you're not like super offended by everything going on, but also not necessarily getting on that level with them, because often you can lose respect. And I think women lose respect more than men do, which is such a double standard, by engaging too much in that. So for instance, when I go out with male coworkers, I will drink with them, but I will not get really drunk with them, because I think it could put me in a position where they don't have as much respect for me. Whereas two guys can go out together, they can get wasted together and have more respect for each other. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong or whatever, but the point is,
It is what it is.
To earn the respect of men in our position, sometimes we have to work harder than the men, and we have to have better results in those men, and we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
I agree, because even sometimes, I think, even say you're like one of those reps who consistently over exceeds and does really, really well, but then you look around and it's literally all men next to you, and for some reason, I don't know, you like want to be like, wow, like look at me, I'm the only woman, but like no one seems to like even care or something. And so I feel like I don't know, it's just so interesting, because I feel like, for example, like a lot of my girlfriends at work, like we're all very close with men at our work, but there is definitely like a bro thing, and it's like hard to understand how much you should grow with them versus being, like, I am a woman and I don't want you to talk like that or something.
I think it's specific to each individual person. I don't want to, pass a judgment. It's just, I think I used to play a little too far in the I'm going to keep up versus now and it's different too when you're in leadership. You do have to hold yourself to a bit of a higher standard. I would never go out getting drunk with people that report to me, but I do think it's a difficult balance, and it's up to each person. But I just encourage women to think about it. I've seen so many young women in their careers just say things at work that you're just like, it kind of makes you seem not as credible. And granted, I think the same of men when they do that too. It makes them seem not as credible when they're being so, there's no.
I think that's a great point. What else? Like, is there any other? I could talk to you probably for the whole day. What would you want? Like, is there a message that you want to get across, or that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about, I guess?
I think the biggest thing on the topic of women in sales and women in tech is, and we talked about this ahead of this conversation, I am really passionate about wanting to see more women in sales and in tech. As I progress in my career, I do see less women around me, and I hate that. It doesn't make me excited. It makes me angry. I want to see more women in this field. I think there's a lot of things about how women tend to be that make us really great at sales, because we do really care often about the person we're talking to. There's a genuineness I think a lot of women have. So my message is that I think sometimes, and Sheryl Sandberg talks a lot about this in Lean In, we can't control whether or not there's a good old boys club, and we can't always control things that happen, but we can control how we react. And I think often we as women do not put ourselves in the best position to succeed. And so I would just challenge women who are in tech, in sales, to think about what they can do to propel themselves forward, whatever career path they want to be on, whether it's leadership or just continuing to get better territories. And what I mean by that is, Sheryl talks about having a seat at the table, and women often being a little bit afraid of asking for a promotion, asking for a raise. And I've really taken that to heart. I go into meetings with our exec team. I don't ask them, where do you see me? I tell them, here's where I want to be. This is what I want. This is what I think I should be being paid. And so just make sure that you're fighting for yourself. If you want something, don't doubt it. Go into a conversation with leadership, asking for what you want, being confident about it. If you show signs of weakness, male or female, they will push back. But men tend to be, according to studies, and Cheryl cites several of them, a little bit more aggressive about demanding what they need at work. Just remember, business is business. There's a personal side of it, but it's business. And so if a business is not giving me what I want out of my career, I can go to another business tomorrow. And so make sure you have that approach when you go to your boss and say, look, I really want to be here. I love this company. And you, as women, we can show a little emotion, which makes it seem not as threatening. I want to be here, but I believe that I should be being paid X or have this promotion. And as a company, I really want for you to be able to tell me, if it's not possible now, when that is, what I need to do to get there and to set up a career path for me. Because I'll be honest with you, if I don't have a career path to go where I want in my career, I'm not sure how long I'll be here. And that would be terrible because I want to stay here. And so I think we bring a little bit of emotion into it, but we ultimately say, here's what I need from you as my employer. And so I think that's something that we as women can be better at.
That's really great feedback, and I appreciate all of that. I think people will really find that helpful. Have you personally had things like that happen to you, like where you were like, I want, X promotion or X amount of money when you weren't making it, and how did that go down?
Yeah, so I'll be a little vague about it, but yes, there was a time
Okay.
where I believed that I deserved a promotion based on the results and the performance that I had produced. And I was told that that would be given to someone else with more experience. And at first I thought about giving up and just leaving the company and going elsewhere. And then I realized I love where I am. I would like to be here. Why don't I fight for it? So I went back to leadership. I basically fought for what I wanted. I told them I didn't think it was fair. I gave them exact reasons why. I didn't come in emotional or get upset, but I kind of tried to logically lay out, here's why I believe I deserve this promotion. Here's what I would like to see. And my mentality was, if I don't get it, at least I tried, and then I can go somewhere else not having any regrets, but I'm going to try. And in my case, it ended up working out by coming in so aggressively about it. It really caught their attention, and their response was, you know what, we thought about it more. You're exactly right. We didn't have a good reason why we were planning to bring someone else, and we just thought that's what you do. And so it did change things.
Interesting. Okay. Just thinking about this kind of random question, but I just thought of it. So when you're, it's the beginning of the month, right? I don't know if you have a monthly quota, but a lot of SaaS and software and tech companies do. So what would you tell someone who maybe came out of a bad month the month before, going into this month? How do you keep your employees motivated when they're not feeling so hot?
It's very one-to-one. It depends on the person. So some of the reps on my team are pretty tough, and sometimes they need a kick in the butt. So look, your performance is not up to par. I don't want to put you on plan, but I'm going to have to if we don't get performance this month. Let's get to work. How can I help? Other people who they get a little more upset about it, for them it's like, look, I know you're in a tough spot right now, but you're really good at what you do. Here are the things that I really like about what you do. There are some things, as we've discussed in our last one-on-one, that you can improve on, but the only way you're going to make it through this is if you're positive, you stay focused, and you execute. If you get too down on yourself, you're not going to be able to really focus and actually hit your number this month. So I need you to push everything else out of your mind, like, you got this. I believe in you. So you kind of have to know for each person what they need. Sometimes people just need encouragement, and sometimes they need you to be tough on them. And I think it's case by case.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's like knowing who you're talking to and knowing how to approach those people that will help them the most. Okay, so we're almost up to go, and I'm just curious, like, say internally with your organization, as you've grown it from just that one employee and yourself, and then you've grown it over time. Can you talk about the career path for those people internally, and how, like, what you see someone, say, coming from, well, I have a lot of, sorry. So like someone who's a BDR and SDR, is that your starting point into your sales org typically? Okay.
Well,
so who are those people typically?
Yeah, good question. So we do have an SDR team to an account exec team. I'll admit we're getting better at this as an organization as we grow. At first we were just kind of like, well, you're an SDR or you're a sales rep, and now we're getting better. So initially we had goals that once an SDR hits X goals, they're eligible for promotion. It doesn't mean they will get it, but they're eligible for it. And so far, everyone who's gotten there has actually been promoted. So out of the 16 SDRs we have, 6 of them have come from our SDR team, 10 of them have been external. In the early days, we had to, of course, hire external because we didn't have SDRs who were ready. Now that our team is starting to be more tenured, we're getting more. We just promoted 2 actually this week. It started on Monday. So,
awesome.
Yeah, SDRs have a career path to become a senior SDR and then to be promoted to an account executive. Account executives, whether external or internal. We now have 3 different segments, kind of an SMB, a mid-market, and an enterprise team. There's certainly possibilities to move up to the next step there. And we're working on now, and again, we're not quite there yet, having more steps within a particular role. So some people in our mid-market role may never really want to be on the enterprise team, but they still want to feel like they're progressing. So we're working on figuring out the best way to build in more of that. Part of that will be raises in their base salary. We want to think of some other things. I don't know if it'll be a title change too, but I definitely think as millennials, it's important to give them a career path. So I would say we do okay at it. We're probably not as good as we could be.
Yeah, but that's cool to hear like what you're thinking about, just even comparing it to like HubSpot and things I've seen with other organizations, like just giving people, I don't know, each step that you make and each thing that you accomplish, like how much MRR you brought in over the years or whatever it is, and then you get a bump in base or a bump in your commission structure. Stuff like that is really great. Cool. What else? Is there anything else you want to go over today? I think we've talked about a lot, but I'm just curious if there's anything else I missed.
So much. I mean, if anybody listening to the podcast wants to reach out and ask questions, I'm happy to chat in spare time. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if somebody wants to debate something that we've talked about. I love a good, healthy conversation.
I love it.
So yeah.
Yes. And are you guys hiring Terminus in sales? It's always good to talk about that if you are.
We're always hiring now. We just run on a class of 4 new account executives, so I'm not filling a spot immediately, but we're certainly still taking interviews. That will be at our next class. So we are always hiring for SDRs and account executives. So you can check that out on our website, or again, hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope everyone found this valuable, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great day. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy selling. Bye.
Bye.